Hi there, my name's Jill Tiny. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learnt an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hello and welcome to the Journey of Possibility podcast with Collaboration Global. My name is Jill Tiny, and today I'm really proud to announce that we are joined by Ray Snow, one of our Collaboration Global members. And I think we're going to have a first on this podcast where we're going to have some music, and Ray is going to be treating us to a little song later on. But first and foremost, Ray, welcome. Lovely to have you here.
Pleased to be here. Thank you, Jill. Hi.
Fantastic. You and I are renowned for being able to gab quite a bit. So I'm looking at the time now and I'm thinking we will be an hour. We're going to pack a lot into an hour. And if I feel that we're going on, I'll be giving you the old signals. Like, that's it, enough. So I'm looking to have a luxurious hour with you because you and I have got so much to say to each other and to the world that we could go for half a day quite easily or longer, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So first and foremost, would you like to share with our audience what brought you to the Collaboration Global space and what made you want to become a member?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I'd previously done is I'd watched the Collaboration grow, but hadn't really got the concept of what it was doing. And actually, probably, to be honest, I wasn't really in a good place to be able to come and join in. In my own kind of mindset, I just wasn't ready. So I made a lot of changes this year in terms of I ended the business ownership of my business and moved in with somebody else, and that was a massive step for me. 18 years of a big change, and
not many businesses can say they've lasted that long. If they get to 5, they're lucky. So that's a really successful business.
And the weird thing about it was I for a lot of that time, and I felt that I was actually failing. Can you believe that? Because I hadn't reached the unachievable goal that I'd set myself. Was just so actually, I look at it very, very romantically and differently now. That it was a good thing, and it was good development for me. So once I'd made that move, I was looking for another avenue, and I'd already kind of dived knee deep into my music at the time, and that really kind of opened up an avenue. And then I thought, do you know what? Actually, I think I'm ready, and I kind of stepped in quite precariously. What's this all about? To be brutally honest, the fact that you were involved and Beju was involved at the time as well, two very familiar faces and people I knew well, and that was kind of the open channel. And since then, I just look on the guys fondly, and they're a great bunch of guys, and it's a great group to be a part of.
You've fitted in really well at a time when we are growing and morphing into this new organisation. For those people that are listening to this at the moment, we have had previous podcasts by B Collaboration, which was the sort of former entity of where Collaboration Global has now morphed into. Yeah. And now the way you fit into our community, we've tried out new things and we've brought you in on stuff, and it just feels like you've always been here. It's only a few short months.
I know.
2-3 months? I can't remember, it just feels like you've always been part of this. So it's such a privilege to be able to get you on this podcast today. So thank you very much for coming here. Yeah. Let's have a little bit of a journey now. What was Ray like as a 5-year-old and a 15-year-old and a 25-year-old? And what got you to where you are today? I'm going to grab my cup of tea because this is all you know. Tell us who you are and where you come from.
Put your feet up and take your time. Now, when I was, stepping from a child, I was always a very kind of energetic child. I think I was.
What they say nowadays, you'd be ADD or.
I don't know if it was that far, but it was like, but also very, but I was also, I think, affected well, I know I was affected in some fashion from a parental problem. My parents split when I was 5. I lived with my mum, and my brother was probably 1 year old at the time. So I had problems in primary school, trying to sort of get into a learning capability. And I remember certain incidents where I just felt kind of the outsider of every circle that I stood upon. But I don't think that I can't necessarily. I don't necessarily blame my parents. I think it would have been a tragedy if they'd stayed together. But it was a journey that was forced upon me either way. So as that journey progressed, I still saw my father on a regular basis. My stepdad came onto the scene a couple of years later. And the guy, quite frankly, is, you can't compare my father and my stepdad. My stepdad is an awesome guy. They're completely different people. But he's a really, really supportive guy. If you can get a sentence out of my stepdad, you'd be lucky. Which is a shame, really, because our conversations are long-winded from my side and very short from his.
Sounds like a perfect relationship.
Yeah, but the point being is, it kind of gave me this kind of attitude of, and time again, my stepdad has actually said to me, well, "What are you going to do about it then?" And that's kind of his. I
like that.
It's kind of and I'm like, well, I don't know. He said, well, that's no good, is it? You can't. I can't see what to do. You got to do it. And it was a fantastic view of how I wanted to do things. And when I went to secondary school, I started music. I was playing a clarinet.
Wow.
I did 6 terms actually learning to play clarinet.
What grade did you get to?
I was a grade 4.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I was. I kind of. I'll be honest with you. The only reason I did it was because there was a flute player I liked.
What was his name?
She was Ruth. And when I eventually plucked the courage up on term 6 to ask her out, she said no. So so every cloud, I learned to play the music, and I learned to but from that point on, I suppose my career has always been. I stepped into an apprenticeship in IT when I left school. I was involved at the time cycling, so I was into racing cycling at the time, and we'd moved from I lived in Stanford-le-Hope, but we moved from Stanford-le-Hope to Rayleigh during the exam term actually, and prior to getting that job, I used to ride to Stanford-le-Hope from Rayleigh every day to school and back. And that was kind of my approach. And then, of course, before I bought a car to work, I cycled to work and back. And
give people an idea of how far that is, because obviously I'm an Essex girl, so I know what you're talking about.
It's about from Rayleigh to Stanford-le-Hope is about 12, 13 miles. So it's 30 miles in, 13 miles home every day.
Yeah.
And I did that every day. I actually worked in Colchester at one stage, and I rode from, I lived in Benfleet then, and I rode from Benfleet to Colchester. That was 42 miles.
Fit. Crumbs.
There, and 42 miles home every single day. I mean, it's ridiculous.
No matter what the weather. Gosh.
Yeah. Of course, science has changed since then. You don't do miles like that anymore. It's more quality than quantity.
Yeah.
But that was a really good time, because I was beginning to meet people. I'd moved out of an area, and I was beginning to meet people, and I had to kind of meet people. CB radios came on the scene then, and I was beginning to learn to communicate with people through vocals, but not sight, and I was beginning to become a little bit more extrovert in what I was. My first job was for Access, the credit card people,
right,
and that's where my kind of 30-year career in IT kind of went to. And I saw it as a means to really kind of to really push my career and go for it, and I enjoyed it. I got to travel around the world.
Wow.
In one company, I got to fly to Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia, Germany, France, Holland, Canada. You can imagine these places.
Yeah.
The last project that I was involved in was in New York, in one of the World Trade Centers, South Tower. And that was the end of my corporate career, if you like, because that's the thing that actually drove me from this immensely positive and very focused person. I never liked second place. I was always a trying to win and a striver. And for me, I'd spent some time in New York, and I came home from a project to have a short period of time of rest. Flew a colleague out to cover my ground while I was away, and 2 days after that, 9/11 took place, and that was to have lost someone that you really respected. I was the invitee. I was the one who invited him out there. And of course, the business and the company that I was working for lost 167 members of staff as well.
Yeah.
And there am I sitting at home with a cup of coffee, having a rest. Was the destruction, if you like, of my mental health at that very point. I realise now that my attitude and my thoughts and my kind of process was that they call it PTSD now, but I even when I talk about soldiers and people that come back from war zones and stuff like that, I still don't. Even though I'm fixed, and I'm happy to talk about how I'm fixed, but the one thing that really kind of hits me is that I never felt that I had the right to be diagnosed with PTSD because I hadn't done anything. I'd come home to have a cup of coffee, for Christ's sake. Excuse my French. Why have I got? How can I possibly have PTSD? I didn't do anything, And that's kind of the thing that I always had, and I had this guilt complex that had I stayed there, I wouldn't be feeling how I felt, and therefore I should have been there, and then therefore the whole process would have been set correctly in the way that it was supposed to be designed. And yet on the other hand, I had a wife and child that I loved dearly, and I couldn't leave them behind either. So I was just this kind of no man land, I didn't talk to my wife, Jackie. She's an adorable person. You've met her. Most tolerant woman in the world. I mean, we're actually celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary in May this year.
Oh, lovely.
Which is fantastic. But for a lot of the 13, 14 years that I suffered with depression and anxiety built from this, I never ever spoke to her about it. And that's the weird thing, because someone that you're so close, intimately close with, and I mean from a mindset perspective, and yet this was the thing that I blocked from her. And the reason for doing so was because it was a protective mechanism for me.
Right.
But actually it was quite a destructive mechanism, now we know.
Yeah.
Because my moods were very short, my attention span was very poor, my ability to open up and kind of share how I felt had disappeared, and that was the very thing that brought us together in the first place. My son at the time had when he later on in life he became a cyclist like I did, and for a short period of time I became his coach, and I was immensely. People say you shouldn't live your life through your dreams through your children, and that's exactly what I did. I mean, okay, he got what he wanted from it, but I was very, very tough on him, and there was no need for me to be that tough. It's giving him he's a very grounded and individual, and is ineffective. Is not affected by it. But it's the other bits that with the mental health side of things that really kind of affect people around you, and that is that I become almost dependent on antidepressants on and off. Every time I came off, it was a struggle to kind of think straight, and everything became overwhelming all of the time.
When you realise that you're not dealing with the emotions that are causing the depression, you're protecting yourself from feeling bad, because that was the PTSD that was kind of kicking in. But at the same time as protecting yourself from sad, upsetting emotions, you're also protecting yourself from joy and love and all these sorts of emotions that everyone would be willing to experience. So you were kind of living a half life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I mean, for example, the thing, this is long before music even kicked in, but I realised that when we went out with friends, because often I wouldn't want to go out, but I knew that when I got out to my friends, I mean, I've got some really good friends, and when we used to go out, once you've started to talk to your friends and once you've began to have people around you that you love, and then something funny happens and you laugh and you have a great time. But in order to laugh, I also became, if I use the word lightly, in terms of became a connoisseur of whiskey. I mean, there wasn't many whiskies I didn't know, and there were a few that I really liked, you know, in terms of flavour, and I enjoyed those. But that became more and more and more and more and more until you know, it became a almost, you know, a dependent. I mean, I never really thought I was dependent upon it, but
was it a crutch?
It was the thing that made me laugh. I mean, when you say you're not dependent upon it, but you are regularly cleaning anything between 7 and 9 bottles of whiskey a month, that is dependency. You know, it's delusion to say you're not, but it's dependency. You know?
Everyone likes to think they're in control of the situation. I could quit tomorrow, it's not a problem. Well, why don't you? Oh, well, maybe next week.
But it was getting worse. It was getting worse as time went on, and I basically we reached a point where my own business that I'd set up, and the only reason I set up my old business, Res Infotech, really, when I whole look at this whole thing was a distraction from how I felt, because I couldn't go back to corporate buildings anymore. I'd made a decision after 2 years being made redundant at that point, because I'd made a decision not to go back, that I'd take that money, invest it in a company, and then I'd go and do my own thing. And that's what I did. But that distraction was 13 years. I employed a PA who I'm trying to think timescales here, but let's say it must have been 5 or 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I suppose. I employed this PA, no, it's close to 7. Now, I employed this PA, and one day she said to me, she said, "Can I have a word with you in the ballroom?" And I said, "Yes, of course you can." So I went in the ballroom, and she said to me, "I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I can't work with you." So I was like, "Wow, okay." And I tried to be all very boss, you know, like, and professional, like, and I said, "That's a real shame, because I value your input very much so." And she said, "I know you do." So I said, "So does that mean you're leaving?" She said, "Oh God, no, I'm not leaving." She said, "But whatever's inside your head, we've got to sort out, and I'm going to sort you out, and this is going to be the hardest journey of your life."
Whoa.
So, and I'm like, "Oh Christ, I can't
Didn't
even
see that coming.
I can't even sack her because she's going to help me." So she gave me a card of a cognitive behaviour therapist, Alison, her name was, and it took me a very, very long while before I actually called her and did it. But at that point there, I was really, really aware that I was affecting people around me. Wow. And it just took a long time.
Was your wife secretly going, "Oh God," or she just got used to you being up and down?
Well, she got used to it, and I think the thing that pains me the most, and this is the bit that really hits me hard, is that she said, once I consider myself to be fixed, that she said, "Thank God my life of walking on eggshells has gone."
Yeah. That's what we do, isn't it? I know that feeling.
And that's the thing. It's like, so I'm thinking, so when I said to her, you know, "How long have you been walking on eggshells?" And she said, "About 13 years. I'm thinking, oh, wow. You know, that's tough. And it was exhausting for me. It was exhausting for her. Nothing was ever really resolved, but I knew that it was there, and I had this thing that I couldn't get rid of from inside it. And
was that the point that you two started talking? Because you hadn't said anything to her before that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I went to, I'd said to her that I'm going to go and see this woman and see how it goes, and she said, "Well, it's a good thing, so, you know, just do what you need to do." I'd made a conscious decision at that point that I would try and open up the best I could, which I did. Alison was probably, well, she's no pushover. I'll give you that. But I kind of immediately took to what she was trying to do. And whilst it was really, really tough for me, she just kind of metaphorically handheld me through the journey. And when I'd finished speaking with her and doing this thing, she literally became a personal friend, you know, not just the therapist that put me right. And that's when I wrote a song about her, you know.
That's lovely.
Yeah, and that was the kind of weird thing because
that's a nice testimony. Is she still practicing? Should we give her a shout out? What is she?
Yeah. Her name's Alison Bourne. She works for herself and she works from home, and she has I'm not sure in terms of the certifications and stuff, but she has this huge ability to just kind of put the right question into you and then sit back and listen.
Yeah.
The analogy I would use is it's like when you know everything's in a cupboard and it's all been put away nicely.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you open it, it all falls out on top of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the analogy of what I was like. It was like I knew it was inside. I knew it was there.
Yeah, just couldn't find it.
Organise it, but when she opened the doors, it all just came crashing out.
So Alison Bourne, if you need anything like that, if you need your cupboard sorting out, Bourne, is that her surname?
Yeah.
And she's based in Southend, but based in Essex. So I'm sure she can contact people across the globe. So
absolutely,
go and give her a Google, as recommended by Ray Snow.
Indeed.
So that was your next. So she helped you to kind of come out of that. So things you haven't mentioned that I know about your story, apart from the Twin Towers, you know, tragedy that's affected you, and I can see why it's affected you because you know we know of soldiers that have come back, and whilst they might be injured themselves, one of the things they can't believe is that they've lost their friends while they're out there, or they were in a place and their friends should have been there, and it's the what do they call it?
It's like a guilt factor to it.
Yes, it's survivor's guilt, survivor's remorse. But also, at one point, you were so good on that little cycle of yours that weren't you training to be in the Olympics at one point?
Well, I got to train with the '92 Barcelona Olympic squad. We were lucky. We were very, very lucky. This portion of the country, the southeast, had probably the best cyclists in the region. And the opportunity came about. So it was basically a road sessions. We went out and rode for the teams, and the guys that I was riding with were absolutely phenomenal. And if I'm brutally honest, you know, if I'd ever thought that I was going to get there, I probably didn't think that I would ever get there because the guys around were fantastic. But what they did was they took me from the whole process of getting involved with British cycling riders of that caliber and then training with the squad at that caliber. You suddenly go from, I'm riding at level 1, but I'm very, very good. You know, I mean, I'd won a few races and I'd done a few things, you know, and I was beginning to really kind of get the whole thing into play. But all of a sudden you train with these guys and then you're thinking, okay, so that's not going to happen. That's fine. I'm happy with that. That's fine. But then you go and race and you suddenly realise you're now racing at level 8 just from being around people who, I know they say like, you know, spend as much time as you can with the people who succeed and therefore you'll become one of those.
Yeah.
That couldn't have been a better analogy. And of course, and then when my son Daniel had taken it up, I mean, he started riding a bike from the age of 12, and with the knowledge I'd picked up with these guys, I mean, there was the Commonwealth Games squad in '94 as well. Got an opportunity to ride with those as well. The whole kind of selection process had changed then, you know. But I was racing sort of national level races, and I would now could feed that back into Daniel, and we got him to Europe. He was racing in Holland and Belgium and the Tour of Wales and various and had I not had that experience, and this is why I think experiences, you know, like that are just awesome. but yeah, I think you see, I've got pictures of me with riders that rode the Olympics there. Daniel's got pictures of him racing alongside people who are world champions now.
Wow. I do remember you saying to me once years ago that you were taking Daniel to some event and you got to go on this bus, and who was sitting next to you on the bus? And it was like, totally, I was ignorant of anybody in that sphere. And you went, it was only Victoria Pendleton. I sit next. And I'm like, who's she then? And of course now she's this major celebrity. But I do remember you being very excited that you got to sit next to her on the
You know what? The beautiful thing about these, and this is when you shout out and you see these celebrities on, I was immensely lucky. The whole of cycling's changed now. It's a bit like Premiership football. You can't touch a footballer anymore, you know. Yeah. But when I was involved in cycling in the sort of 90s and early 2000s, for example, riders were. I mean, we knew one of the head coaches at Manchester Velodrome, and we would come out of the stands, walk down the stairs and through the tunnel and wave and say hi and walk around. Yeah. And I was, and there you were walking around riders like Victoria Pendleton. We were part of Welling Wheelers, which is where the Trots came from, you know. Wonderful individual there, and often we'd stand in the foyer, and Chris Boardman would come through, and I think it was just after Victoria Pendleton had won the world medal at the World Championships. We were standing there, and she came over, and she put the world medal round Dan's neck, and then took a photo, and we've got that photo in our
wow.
And you know, and whether she'll ever remember doing that, it's irrelevant, because you suddenly realise that there are people out there who are so famous, who are so good at what they do, but they don't do it for the fame. They do it for the progression of others, you know.
And also, I've seen her since doing that SAS program.
Yeah.
And you understand the level of mental strength, and it's not so much her aspirations that, you know, in NLP terms, neuro-linguistic programming, there's that space. If you go towards something, i.e. goal, or you go away from something, you don't want to sort of go back to that area that you don't. But she was driven, wasn't she? And it was driven from something in her past that she didn't want to be part of. So she wasn't striving for a goal. It was not optional for her. She had to do it.
Absolutely. And I think that also comes from the delivery of, I mean, for example, I had the pleasure of meeting Max Pendleton, the dad. Often he would compete at Mildenhall on the grass tracks. It was quite and he was a very hard training, if you're going to do this, do it properly attitude. And I think in Victoria Pendleton's book, she says, you know, how hard she was pushed behind it. But I think she uses the term pushed in a romantic sense of, because you can't encourage someone to train to, you know, 2 millimeters from the end of their life. You have to push someone to that level so that they've got there, because the coaching will only draw you to what you think you can achieve, not what you can. So I think her view of that was, and the same thing with, I mean, I also met Adrian Trott, you know, and he coached my Dan for a while, and Dan would often turn up to a track meeting with all his best gear on, and Adrian said, what have you turned up on that for? It's a training session. Train on your heavy stuff, race on your light stuff, you know. And he'd really kind of, but it's interesting how you see people have their mental strength, and where does that mental strength come from? And I think if you can, and I don't want to use the word push, but if you can kind of, well, I'll use the word push, but if you can push someone in that direction, but you don't push them too far that they crack, that's the wrong thing to do, you know. But you encourage them to the point that they'll actually look back and go, wow, oh my God, I never knew I could do that, you know. Well,
the classic is the 4-minute mile, isn't it? When Roger Bannister did that, then afterwards, the next week, everyone was at it, you know, everyone could do it. But until that time, because everyone had said it's not possible. But he didn't. That's your opinion. Just watch me. And I love that. When people have that, and I think Victoria Pendleton, as an example, has it in spades. It's like whatever was thrown at her in that SAS thing, there's no way she wasn't going to do it. It was, and you look at it and go, how the hell could she carry that guy in the snow, up the hill, on her back? And she did it. There's nothing, oh my goodness, she did it.
Absolutely.
So it kind of makes you realise that your mental capacity is totally unknown until you really push yourself to the limit. I love the expression you just said, a coach can only get you to what you think you can achieve. So you're the one that has to kind of get the extra mile.
It's your vision, isn't it?
Yeah. So talking of visions, we've moved on from struggling for 13 years and lovely Alison finding that door for you to open it and move forward. But now, as we can see from the poster behind you, your passion is the music. Although you've learnt the clarinet at a very young age, you've not let that go.
No.
Tell us how that came back to be your saviour.
That was quite an interesting thing, actually, because slightly before Alison got involved, but not that far apart, my wife joined a choir, a community choir.
Oh, I love those.
The Big Sing in Rayleigh. And she joined the choir, and she was, I think she was going to some lunchtime sessions that the Basildon Council were sponsoring. Then she joined the Rayleigh group, which was the full-on group, and she'd disappear every Thursday and she'd go and sing, and she'd come back and she'd be all reasonably uplifted. Well, she said to me one day, she said, "You've got to come to the year-end do." I said, "Oh no, I can't be doing that. No, I can't be in the room." No, definitely not. And I was still involved in my sort of restrictive behaviour in where I was. And then she said, "It's a black tie do." And I was like, right, okay, I'm in. Now, me, I love bow ties. There's about 70 plus bow ties in my wardrobe.
Wow.
I love them. So to actually turn up, looking like James Bond.
I was just going to say that, doing your James Bond impression.
Yeah. So I turned up and I found it quite family and close and nice in the environment that they got up and they sung, and I thought, wow, this is they're singing harmonies. This is not just a group of people having a go, And then when we left, I was the two founders, which is Gemma Francis and Howard Francis. Now Howard Francis has got huge accolades. I mean, I absolutely adore the man. Seriously, I do. He's a songwriter. He's a fabulous pianist. He's a singer. He was the keyboard player for Alexander O'Neill all those years.
Wow.
He has played in front of the Queen. This guy has got songs out there that And he came along and he said to me, "Why don't you come along?" He said on a Thursday. He said, "We could do with some more tenors."
Always. Said, no. Every choir you ever go to, they need more men.
Shortage of men. There's always a shortage of men tenors. Yeah. So if you're male and you want to sing, let me know and I'll put you in touch with the choir locally. But I said to him, "I can't sing." It was an interesting concept. I can't sing. He said, "Yes, you can." He said, 94% of people can sing. The other 6 are tone deaf. They just haven't been taught properly.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And I said to him, "But you won't be able to teach me."
Oh.
And that's like a red rag to a bull.
Challenge accepted.
Especially to someone of that caliber and he said to me, he said, "I will teach you to sing and you will sing beautifully." And I was like, oh bugger, I'm in a corner now.
Yeah.
And he said, "Would you like to sing beautifully?" I'm thinking, "Oh, of course I would."
Who wouldn't? Yeah.
He said, "Well, I'll see you next Thursday." Well, it took 3 Thursdays before I turned up.
Oh my goodness!
Big and a huge amount of nagging, because every time I didn't turn up, Jackie came in and said, Howard said, "Where are you?" So I turned up one day very precariously, and I stood between two guys, a blind guy, Mike, who is a fantastic guy. He can hear everything. I think extrasensory behaviour, and the other side was a gentleman by the name of Roy, who have become really good friends, pair of them. And I sat in between the two of them, and I pitched my voice against these two. And I came out thinking, "Oh, wasn't that bad." And I really enjoyed it. So I went back the next Thursday, and of course 3 Thursdays later, that's it, I'm hooked.
You're in.
So that was the singing start. but I'd also bought or had a guitar bought for me for Christmas from the mother-in-law. And once I'd worked out which end to hold it with, I began to sort of self-teach a little bit, and then began to sort of want to sing a few songs. And I had about 10 songs in there and stuff like that. But it had become an obsession. It was also working very, very closely with the mental health and the recovery. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was actually taking some medicine, because it was de-stressing. And every time I achieved something, the great thing about music is that if you're learning to sing or learning to play something, you always get better, and there's always something different you do. So it's a never-ending learning process. And if you always achieve something every time you do it, then the achievement, well, that's the endorphin release, isn't it?
Yeah.
And since then I began to sing. I probably do about an hour to an hour and a half every single day.
Wow.
In terms of and that's been for 5 years.
That should be on the National Health, shouldn't it? Really, to sing. Yeah. And then the next thing, then I sort of did a few open mics. I met a guy called Chris Cannon. Now he's a recording artist who runs these open mics. And after the gig, I said to him, what's your nemesis? I said to him, and he said, "Oh, you don't want to know." I said, I wouldn't ask if I didn't, And I kind of wish I. Well, I'm glad I did, actually, because it became a referral for Alison, actually. But Chris's brother had jumped a platform at Pitsea. What a shame.
And I cannot think or understand just how difficult that family has gone through, and his music was the very thing that kind of was trying to get him back on his platform again, as it were. And I referred him to Alison, and a few years have gone by, and the guy is kind of flying now, and hopefully, touch wood and all that he's doing well. But the open mics for me was a bit of an eye opener. So I did a few of those, and then I was offered a festival gig a couple of summers back, and I was thinking, oh God, this is for real now. And I did it, and it wasn't, in my eyes, it wasn't perfect, but it was well received by everybody else. So
they were all in a good mood, so they were ready for
exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
What festival was that?
That was it was a festival for charity for the air ambulance.
Oh, brilliant!
And they wanted a headlining gig. I mean, that was something to go. Yeah, honestly, seriously. And that's the first time I'd ever sort of used backing tracks. And we created this 60s set that we were doing, because I very much love the Beatles and Rolling Stones and the Who and and all that sort of era. So. And it went really well. I had some other musicians come along and support me, which was great. And then from that point on, I thought, do you know what? I really, really can. And that was the point at which I thought, I can do this. I can do this. So I began to advertise. One Man Six Strings hadn't created itself yet. Didn't really know what it was really at that point. But it kind of evolved. And now I'm probably 25, 30 gigs in now.
Wow.
And can't wait for the next one. And then this year I'm planning to stock up with as many gigs as I possibly can.
Yeah.
For celebration venues, pubs, clubs, I don't know, whoever wants to listen to music and book me, I'll play. It's kind of like that, really. But in and around that, I want to utilize that music and place it in places where, how can I put it? If someone needs to be taken out of their small little world that they're in and they're struggling, just to listen to music, then that's kind of how I want to do it. And I think I like a lot of I like a lot of coffee shops, because people will often go to a coffee shop just to sit back, and you can it makes you people watch, actually.
Yeah.
You see whether people are coming in to relax and have a wonderful coffee, or you can see people coming in who are just, they sit down and they want to just zone out and get out of it. But either way, you can always find a musical mood that fits those those things, you know.
I think it in connection with Collaboration Global, it fits with the sort of community feel, because I think if people go to coffee shops, it's a place where you can be around other people, but not necessarily have to communicate with other people. You can be on your own, but being with other people just gives you that sense of belonging to something.
Yeah.
And I think when you've got a coffee shop, or in my dreams, one day I'd love to have a Collaboration Global cafe in every town. And then at this place, then the kids would go after school to do their homework and have support and get their homework done, or hang out like a youth club, or people would have, open mic nights or comedy nights, absolutely. Or all of that kind of book clubs, whatever you wanted to do. It would be a place for the community to go to.
Yeah.
One of my go-to happy places in the world is the jazz cafe at Sandbanks.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been there, but you walk along the seafront and you've got nature, you've got the beautiful blue ocean, you turn a corner and you can hear this sound coming out, and it's this live band, massive piano, massive drum kit, and somebody comes up with a trumpet, somebody comes up with a clarinet, and somebody comes up to sing, and you're sitting there with a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, or everyone brings their dogs in, you've got a roaring log fire, and we're all strangers, nobody knows each other, but we're all part of that family because we've all come in to enjoy that space and that music.
Absolutely.
I think having places like that where people can just sit and be, and
absolutely
reassess that, I've just had a row with my husband, but it doesn't really matter because I'm just chilling out, and you can almost see people when they are their physiology, when they're upset or angry, you can just see it in their energy and their tension. And anytime there's music, you just and you get the rhythm and you get the beat, and you can lose it, and
it goes away. And
the song that saves you is the one that is your favorite and the one that you come back to again and again.
Absolutely.
I remember when 1988 we had been through a business that we'd started, me and my hubby, and it had gone very, very, very badly because the business partner had been a bit naughty. Leave it at that. And we had less than nothing. And we were in a dire state. And at the same time, Yaz and the Plastic Population was the only way up. So, and it was literally on a record player that I would come in and I would put that record on, and I would dance like no one was watching, and I would sing at the top of my voice, and okay, now I can cope with the rest of the day. That's all it took, because sometimes you were brought so low you couldn't see. Everything was around the corner. You couldn't see the light at the tunnel because it was around the corner. And you just feel this. I was talking about it earlier on this week, the whole theme of the last 2 weeks has been overwhelm.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, in business or with family and relationships, this overwhelm. And for me, it's like someone's going,
absolutely.
It's all too much. And, and it might be, some people feel it as a pressure or a pressure. And if you don't have your little trigger release, then you don't have your go-to space to kind of take the pressure off of you, then eventually you have breakdown.
That absolutely.
For whatever reason.
Absolutely.
So I asked on Facebook or actually might have been on our platform, what's your go-to thing when you're suffering from overwhelm? Actually, it was on LinkedIn, I remember now. What's your go-to? And it's bash, 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 bash. Everybody would put into the amount of people that said music.
Absolutely.
It's this ethereal thing that just floats. It's not just out there. It attacks our heart and our soul, and it becomes part of who you are. So when you're sad, sometimes you play a sad song and you cry your eyes out, but you feel better after it. And sometimes you need, exactly. Sometimes you need uplifting, and it just fills your heart. And I don't know about you, there are certain songs that I listen to and I cannot fail but cry every time I listen to it, in a good way. You know, it's not necessarily bad, but it just, for people that are not moved by music,
I don't believe anybody isn't.
No.
That's what I think. I mean, this particular song that I'd written was had reference to what I was trying to achieve. Trying to find time for reflection for me. And it also had references to a beautiful line. Well, I think it's a beautiful. Sparking my own song up here, but
why not?
Every now and again you get a good line. It was like there was a line in there, those that I knew before but missing the guilt, makes reference to my 9/11 experience. And then of course it was all about people who were trying to distract you from what you were trying to achieve, and the whole mess of the situation, and where Alison came in. I called it Listen to Ali. That's what I called the song.
That's nice. What does she think? Have you played it to her?
Yeah, she's like kind of a bit overwhelmed, really, but the fact that she said, I've never had a song written for me,
That's cool. That is cool. Well, maybe in about 5 or 10 minutes, I think we'll have a little listen to that.
Yeah.
If that's the one you want to play, unless there's something that comes up in the meantime.
Yeah, I'll give that a whirl. Yeah, see what you think.
So when you came into Collaboration Global, although we kind of saw you coming in this sort of suited and booted with the bow tie, gent come through the door, and you talk to people saying, in a networking situation, people say, what do you do? In other words, how do you make your money? And in Collaboration Global, we don't really care. It's like, that's what we do. We want to know what makes your heart beat faster. So we only really know you as this one man, 6 strings kind of guy that's sharing. And you very quickly shared your personal story around your mental ill health at the time. And it's an ongoing journey for all of us. We're all on this little spectrum. But also one of the things that struck me that you shared very early on was how you help people on Suicide Watch.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I'd reached a point when you talk about overwhelm. There were many times in the past where I was completely overwhelmed by things going on around me, and I always had this view that things and life and things would be better off without me, and this is kind of the attitude that a lot of people who are considering or thinking about suicide have, and it was silly little things that I had in my life. I'd almost planned it very badly. Gladly I planned it badly, but I mean, I would have things like, me personally, my previous experiences were I'd have a hose pipe in the car, because if things got that bad that I couldn't cope, that I could, I'd even planned the place that I was going to do it. It was the top of the multi-story car park in Southend, because no one ever parked up there because it was always empty at the top, isn't it? So I would consider driving to the top, put the hose pipe in, and then just go to sleep, because it was a kind of I could go to sleep. I was already exhausted, so it wouldn't take long for me to go to sleep anyway. So, but when you kind of reflect back on that, and I shouldn't. Well, I should, but I have to. This is the way I have to look at it. I looked at it as quite comically, in essence, because what I hadn't considered is that the hose pipe that I bought to the job was 60 meters in the boot of the car, cellophane wrapped up with electrical ties, because that's how they package these things. Yeah. And you can just imagine somebody who's considering to do it at that point, opening the boot and thinking, "Oh, for God's sake, this is going to take me ages to do this," nothing to cut the hose pipe with, what a nightmare, you wouldn't, having had the discussion previously about, did you ever consider jumping off the top of the multi-story? And I said, no, I didn't, because I don't like heights. I mean, seriously. I mean, these are
can be not so good.
Yeah. But what really struck me was I got involved in the music, and I attended a music festival in Basildon a couple of years back, and my friend Chris had done the festival in remembrance of his brother with the platform and the train, I saw him play, and it was fantastic. It was a great thing. Lots of money raised, fantastic. And a lady by the name of Kirsty from Reach Out for Mental Health, based in Grays, stood up and did this speech about suicide. And I remember my family was sitting there watching it, and they all had, imagine like a big picnic mat on the grass we had. And when Kirsty started to speak, I stepped 15, 20 paces to the right away from them while I listened to it. Yeah. And Kirsty, it was almost like, I was 50, 60 meters away from the stage, and yet she'd hit me in the chest so hard. It was, oof. I was thinking, this is me. Wow. How damn close was I at given points in my life to have got that far where I could have done it. and that was the point. I thought, I've got to get involved. And I spoke to Kirsty after, and I said, look, how can I get involved? And she said, we're looking for volunteers. We want volunteers to help people and listen to them and try and drive them away from that ambition of doing that. And I've seen a few patients, and it's quite grounding. It's someone said to me, do you need to have therapy after you've done it? I said, no, you don't, because the whole thing you're doing and what you're listening to, yes, it can be harrowing to listen to, but they're actually sitting in front of you. So actually, that's a good thing. It's when they're not sitting in front of you that you've got to worry about it. Yeah. But actually, it's very, very grounding to know that that you're able to listen to somebody else's problems, and then whilst I can't advise, they've often talked themselves into the journey they really should be going, not the one that they were going to, and then off they go. And
half the time is you just need someone to listen.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem around us. I mean, when you've got, Jackie was always a listener. For me, she was always a listener. I wasn't a talker. That was the thing. The whiskey was a little bit of a problem for me, and I remember the last time I ever touched the stuff was I something had happened where it just overwhelmed me too much, and I decided that enough was enough, and I can't do this. And I went out and I walked up and down outside of a local supermarket close to me, and I was contemplating buying a litre bottle of whiskey, and that was it, and I'd already got the thoughts of, okay, well, once I've done the whiskey, the pills can do the thing as well, and everything's okay. And I came back to the summer house, and I unscrewed the bottle of, I shouldn't have bought the whiskey, and I walked away from it actually. And then for some reason, just something turned around and just turned me 180, and I went straight in and bought it. It was almost like I'd lost control at that point. And I came back and I drank this, and I opened up the cap of the bottle, and I literally drank it like a bottle of Coke as fast as I could drink it. Next thing I know that, I've got people sort of carrying me around. I don't remember. I literally don't remember the rest of the evening. I remember my son showed me the video back actually, and said, you need to watch this. And I said, no, I won't touch it again. That's it. I'm okay. I don't want to do this anymore, But Daniel, age 24 at the time, said, no, you're damn well going to watch it. You're my dad, and you've got so much inside your head I need, and you can't leave me yet.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I touched whiskey.
Yeah, that's a good enough reason, isn't it? I think
it was, yeah.
Best reason ever.
So for me, doing what I think I need to do in terms of helping others not do that very thing just gives me such a really good sense of humanity, if you like, in terms of there's too much of it about, and not everyone's listening. But it's not always appropriate for the loved one to listen. I
feel like you can't. I know one of my friends who committed suicide. The note said, "I don't want to be a burden to anyone."
Absolutely, and that's yeah.
So that's why she couldn't tell her nearest and dearest, because that's going to be putting another burden on them.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, none of us are. Mine was 9/11. That was the whole kind of confidence thing for me. But you've also got to take into consideration that person may not want to talk because they may have done something that they shouldn't have done. Whether it's a relationship thing, and maybe the punishment is the fact that they just can't cope with it. I don't know. But the point for that is that sometimes people can't talk because it's something that they're ashamed of or they can't speak about. So actually, by speaking to someone outside of that circle, there's no judgment. I mean, I just say, I've spoken to people who, and I've got no judgment, and say, okay, fine. The fact that you feel like this suggests that you shouldn't have done it. Well, let's not dwell on that now. Let's dwell on where we're going to go with this. How are you going to fix things? How are you going to, and I think that's the difficult thing, isn't it? Because no one really knows what they should or shouldn't have done. I mean, debt is a huge thing. It's a guilt thing, because whilst they can't pay it, they're also guilty for spending the money on things they shouldn't have done. Well, forget that, wipe that clean. You've got to deal with the source of the problem, and that's kind of where I get a lot of pleasure from.
I think this is what amazes me with Collaboration Global and the members and that come into the sort of the monthly meetings, online or offline, is they feel able to share a bit of their self that they can't necessarily share with their family. I mean, we've had a guy stand at the front of the room and say that he'd been a functioning alcoholic for all of his adult life. And he was in his 40s, late 40s. And then as a result of being part of the community, he found the strength to go and take some extra training and support.
Sure.
Because he'd been at the AA for like 20 odd years. And he did him for a year, then he fell off the wagon, then he did it. So that was one thing. Another lady stood up and was able to share about sexual abuse that she'd received as a child.
Of course,
Some of these topics get really heavy and but you look around the room and everyone's got something that is like their story. And
that's why the room, isn't it? That's what it is.
Exactly. And that's why we do these podcasts as well, because people are able to kind of share that, this is my journey and this is how I got to where I am. And now I'm ready to give back. And your story is typical, that not only have you been through that tragedy and you found someone that supported you, but now you're giving back and you're supporting and you're helping other people and they can talk to you because you know exactly what it feels like. And you can share your story, and they look at you and they're like, he seems to be okay now. Little do they know, none of us are okay. we're all on the knife edge, but they feel they can come to you, and that's what I like about the people in the Collaboration Global community, is all of them want to help people. And this is my life experience. How can I help you? What impact can I have in a good way that's going to make your life better every single time?
Absolutely.
So it feels a little bit crass now to talk about the day job and the IT stuff. If anybody were to contact you, let's do a little bit of sales pitch for Method IT, so that they know that you do turn up at the office occasionally. Tell us what Method IT do for companies, businesses.
Okay, so Method IT is a managed service provider. Well, basically what that means is it's about giving the client peace of mind in terms of instead of doing half the IT themselves, and or something goes wrong and then they're calling the IT department, so to speak. Often it's too late by then.
Stress valley, isn't it?
Method look after everything, right the way from the socket on the wall with the broadband, so we can monitor that and make sure that that's performing as it should be, through to the PCs, the supply of hardware, the servers that run the business, the email services, the security, the spam filtering, and all of that. And basically, we have a very, very good team of guys in house. Every machine that we look after is on the network and supported, so we can see what's going on. We even look after telephone systems as well. So there's a whole kind of suite of activity going on. We have, to put it in simple terms, we have a fabulous setup in house that they've got 3 screens up on the wall with graphs relating to all the services we have, and we use a red, amber, green system. If all our clients are green, then that's absolutely fantastic. If something's amber, more often than not, someone in the room has had a notification that machine XYZ in Ipswich is misperforming. They pick up the phone and they tell the customer, by the way, we're looking at this. The customers, when I first started working there, I was shocked by how little phone calls come in-house and how many go out.
Right.
So in other words, we're proactively telling the customer, look, we're looking at this, don't you worry about it, it's all been done. And that's kind of the approach they take. The thing for me, it's about building relationships and kind of putting that point across. So we and the markets we aim for are solicitors, accountants, recruitment firms, generally 20 users plus, which is kind of, the size of customer that this kind of process really works well for. But it's a really great team. I mean, for the last 18 months, 2 years, the calls are answered. I mean, you imagine phoning up an IT company these days, and I think this is probably a USP for them, really, in that they answer their calls in less than 6 seconds. And that's regular. I mean, at the moment, it's sitting at an average of 5.57.
Nice.
Now, instead of being stuck on a queuing system, your call is important. We will be with you in an hour.
Because everyone gets so stressed when their IT goes, and because for most people, especially accountants and solicitors, if your IT equipment is out, that's costing you money.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You can't function. So brilliant.
And that's why I like working for me. It's all about doing it properly.
Yes. You're proud to be part of that organisation, aren't you?
Yeah,
that's lovely.
100%, yeah.
Fantastic. So I think now has come the time for us to. Was it? I was thinking of the walrus and the carpenter. Now is the time. I can't think of the phrase of the poem. Anyway, I think now would be a lovely time for us to hear your dulcet tones and listen to Ali. That would be fabulous if you would like to share that with us.
Okay.
And if anybody would like to get in touch with Ray, what's the easiest way to get hold of you, Ray?
Basically, if you look up one man six strings on Google, literally just type in one man six strings. I've got a Facebook page. We've got a website which is www.oneman6strings.uk. So that's the website there, and everything spurs off from there. There's a Twitter account in there somewhere as well, but the link's all on the website. So. And
obviously, if you want to find out about Collaboration Global and find Ray on our platform, Collaboration Global /mitynetworks.co.uk, and Ray is in there. Just Google his name and you'll find all his profile, and you can have a direct message with him in that as well.
Fabulous.
So
Lovely.
Right. Take it away, as they say.
Tilt this down here because I'm going to change my position. There we are. Okay, right.
There we go.
So this is called Listen to Ali. Trying to find time for reflection, living a life without rejection. Seems so far away. Take me to another day. Looking for sanctuary that I once built, those that I knew before, but missing the guilt. Seems so far away. Take me to another place. Don't let others mess you around. See what you can find. Most of all, the trouble is a figment in your mind. Ali says take some time, feet back on the ground. Pendulum swing of life is such a crazy sound. Control seems so far away. Take me to another place. Don't let others mess you around. See what you can find. You deserve some inner peace, so to yourself be kind. Listen to Ali. Listen to Ali. Looking for sanctuary, it's already inside of you. It's not so far away. There we go.
That was lovely. That was so gorgeous. I bet she was in tears after you played that to her. That's so fantastic. And one day we will sing together. We'll put it on the list of things to do. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much for being a guest today, Ray. We have covered a huge amount of ground and we could have gone deeper into many of those topics. So I'm sure we'll have a revisit at some point going forward.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's been fantastic. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you again at the next London meeting. If anybody wants to meet Ray, they can come along to the London meeting that we meet at Canada Water. That's where he usually hangs out for the Collaboration Global meetings. If you go to collaborationglobal.org, that's the website, and you will find all of the connections to the Mighty Network, the platform, as well as if you want to book onto any of our meetings as well. I think that's enough. Everything else you can find on the Facebook group, Journey of Possibility. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again another day. Thanks very much. Take care,
Thanks,
Diane.
Jill. See you later. Bye.